Hey, welcome to Leadershipisation, all things leadership. I'm going to start by asking you to remember a time. Can you remember a time when someone started talking and almost immediately your attention drifted away somewhere? Can you remember a time when that happened to you? Because I know that I can to me. Can you also remember a time when another leader appeared, another leader spoke, and they didn't actually have to say very much? However, you paid attention. You stopped what you were doing and you actually listened. The interesting thing here is the difference isn't the volume of their voice. The difference isn't their intelligence or their job title. The difference is actually how they show up, their presence. And today in Leadershipisation, all things leadership, we're going to be talking about why people tune into some leaders and why they tune out from others, and what you can shift right now to become someone who people actually want to listen to. I'm Beth Berghan. I'm a global leadership and communication coach, and I help leaders to become more visible in their organization and their industry. And I'm here talking all things leadership most Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which is at the moment 2 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time for New South Wales and Victoria people who might be watching. Yeah. So we've got 4 talking points that we're going to look at today. And then what I'm also going to do is give you some practical tips that you can apply right away. So let's get into this. The reality is that people listen best when they feel seen. People listen best when they feel seen. Now, what this means is that listening, getting them to listen to you, begins way before you even open your mouth. This is about you acknowledging your people. This is about you actually seeing them. This is you showing up with curiosity and with an emotional awareness. Because when we don't have people feeling like they're being seen, what happens is that they feel ignored. And when they feel ignored, they stop listening to you, even when what you have to say is crucial, even when what you have to say is vitally important. They just switch off. And as a leader, you're then left in the position of going, but I told them all that. Don't they listen? So recognize that leadership, I'll start again. Listening to you starts way before you actually have anything to say. So as a leader, you need to adapt your leadership style so that what you're actually doing is being curious, having that emotional awareness, and acknowledging who your team are. Great way to start doing this is to make sure you're saying hello to as many people as you possibly can first thing in the morning or when you first arrive. So that's the first point. The second point is this: clarity. Clarity beats complexity. Clarity beats complexity or rambling or justification every single time. Now, lots of us, when we're talking to a large group of people, when we're, hey, I'm the leader here, how am I handling this? We often begin to ramble because we think that we need to fill the space. Oh, what if they don't understand? Oh, what if no one asks me a question? And when we move into that space, we lose people's attention. And if we continue to ramble over the weeks, over the days, over the weeks, over the months, what happens is not only do we lose their attention, we begin to lose their respect. Because we're never actually saying what we mean. We're rambling on and on about something. When we over-explain, we're actually decreasing the clarity. And this goes against what we think we're actually doing. We think, oh, no one's asking questions. Maybe they don't understand. I'll just tell them these 3 more things. I'll just go down to this next level. I'll really make sure that they understand, because it's important to me that they get this right. So the more we over-explain without pausing to allow people to ask questions, the more mess or the less clarity there actually is. And what happens also is that the team start to think that you're not sure, because that over-explaining, where you think you're being thorough, that over-explaining is actually, they see it as you being uncertain or unsure about what it is that you want them to do. So what's important here is that you know what it is that you want, what point you want to make, that you keep that as simple as possible, and you trust that it's going to land. And if it doesn't land, you trust that they're going to ask you questions which will help you to provide clarity. Yeah? The third point is this. Your emotional state, how you're showing up as the leader, that impacts on how others are going to pay attention to you. If you're all over the place, you're rushing, if what you're doing is kind of dismissing everybody and, pushing them to the background, if they feel unsafe in any way or challenged in any way by what you're saying, people don't listen well in those circumstances. You rush them. If you talk too fast, they just switch off. Now, that doesn't mean you should talk really, really slowly. That people switch off with that as well. But yeah, make sure that you're acknowledging who your audience is, that you're speaking to your audience. Make sure that the language that you're using, the things that you're talking about, help to build culture and help people to feel psychologically safe. Because your emotional state, if you're all over the place like this, that's what's going to happen with them. So make sure that what you're doing is regulating your own emotions, but also the way that you can model really good listening conditions is by managing your tone of voice. Make sure that you're not sounding strident and angry. You don't need to be sounding like that. Yeah. Make sure that you're managing the pace so that it's not too quick, but neither is it too slow. And also manage your presence. And this means looking at people. Actually, oh, there they are. I'm going to eyeball them. But also standing up tall, being confident, being open. All of those body language things that are going to absolutely demonstrate your emotional state, and that's going to be how others will pay attention. Now, if you have a crisis situation, whether it be at home or whether it be at work, you want your tone of voice, your pace, and your presence to be one that is being listened to. And the example that really springs to mind here for me is, if you're walking and a young child is riding their bike with you. So you're responsible for this young child, whether they're your child, whether they're someone else's child. What's really important is that you let kids know, when I yell this in this tone of voice, I want you to stop immediately. Because if they are in danger, we're not going to offer this huge waffly explanation about, oh, get out of the way because I think there's a bit of a bus coming and it might hit you. No. Name, stop, now, maybe 3 words. All in a tone of voice and all with your body language reflecting that you want action now. Now, in giving you that example, that's not one that you're going to probably use in the workplace, but think about carrying that skill set across. Think about how you're going to regulate so that no matter how you're feeling inside, no matter how difficult the conversation or the news or the information you're going to have to impart, you want people to be paying attention to you. Yeah? So again, your emotional state impacts how others pay attention to you. Calm, grounded, even in hard conversations, makes you easier to hear. Calm and grounded. Okay, the fourth thing for us to have a look at is this. I've talked before about how important silly little vitally important moments and things are as part of leadership intelligence. And what I wanted to remind you about here is that those silly little vitally important moments build your credibility. This is when you demonstrate consistency. This is when you demonstrate follow through. This is when you demonstrate that you're treating everybody fairly. This is when you do these silly little vitally important things that actually accumulate and build trust over time. Because if what you're doing is saying one thing and doing another thing, then not only have you lost their attention, but you're also potentially losing their trust. Yeah? Those silly little vitally important things, often the things that we don't think other people are going to notice, when we're in a leadership role, they do. They notice your tone of voice. They notice if there's a panic happening. They notice if you're calm. They notice if you dismiss someone who they know really wants to spend some time talking with you. So look out for those things. Okay, let's now move on to giving you a couple of practical tools that you can use right away that will start to improve your leadership so that your people are listening to you a whole heap more than they might currently be. So I've got 2 here. The first one is this. It's what I call a 10-second frame rule. And this is really in that 10 seconds before you're speaking, just ask yourself a couple of questions. And the first one is, what do I want them to understand? Like at the end of this conversation, what do I want them to have understood? Now, this isn't about you coming up with a great big list. This is about you that might be as simple as or as complex as, this is my intention for the task that they Then what's really important is to look at why should they care? This is the second question for you to ask yourself. I think I just dropped out there for a second. My apologies for that. I'm not quite sure why that happened. It's my glorious internet operating all by itself. It's taking the lead. I need to take the lead back, obviously. So the second question is, why should they care? Now, the interesting thing about you asking yourself, why should they care, is that this is the most successful place for you to start any conversation with anyone. Whether you're doing a presentation, whether you are having a difficult conversation, whether you're running a meeting or a class or whatever, why should they care? We're going to lead from that. So you need to have thought about it. And why is this the ideal place to start from? Because it sharpens your clarity. And because you're talking to them about their why, which is their personal relevance, that you're providing some context and maybe even giving some big picture, this is why you're going to increase their attention. Or, as some people might put it, you're going to increase their buy-in to the conversation that follows. So we would always start with why. The next piece that we would go on to is what. That's a conversation for another time, but just this 10-second frame rule. 1, what do I want them to understand? So at the end of this conversation, what do I want them to understand? And the second question to ask yourself is, why should they care? Because you're going to lead from there. All right. The second practical tool that you can start applying right away, that's my intention with giving you these tools. Before or between meetings, just reset your own presence. Now, this is as simple as you might want to stand up and walk around and shake things off. You might want to, just if there's if you need to lift your own energy level, getting up and just shaking around, not only will it get rid of what you may have been feeling before, but it will build something new up. It will help you to be grounded. Sit back, slow breaths, lower your voice down, because often when we get, when our emotions aren't being successfully regulated, well, our voice gets up here somewhere. And we start to rush with what we're doing, and there's more franticness about our movement. So lower that voice down and just settle down. And then quietly affirm for yourself, I'm going to speak less and listen more so that I'm not scrambled. Yeah? Just that presence reset. So I know that you'll have success straight away with those 2 tools. Easy to understand. The trick is you have to be deliberate about actually applying them, and that's when it becomes challenging for some of us. So, a couple of reflection questions. I've got 2 again for you today. The first one is this. In what situations do you notice people tuning out from you? Yeah, in what situations do you notice people tuning out from you? Now, if you haven't noticed people tuning out from you, then think about when you've observed people tuning out in other meetings or when you've done it yourself. Use that information then to answer the second part of the reflection question, which is, what might that be telling you about how you're showing up? Does it tell you that you need to show up with more energy, with more willingness to engage, with more positive body language? Does it tell you that you need to think about the order that you're making your presentation? And we talked before about you would look at, the first thing you would look at is their why, so that you get that buy-in. And then you're going to move on to the what and the how. And the fourth part of that, it's called the format process. The fourth part of that is what if, which is exploring and being curious about where things, what might we do differently. So that's the first reflection question. Now, I'd really encourage you to take the time to ask yourself these questions and just to write some notes. The second reflection question is this one. What would change? What would change in your leadership if you trusted that less explanation could actually increase your influence? Now, that's a really fancy way of saying if you stop justifying or over-explaining everything, what kind of difference would that make to the impact you had? So think about that. We talk about that an awful lot more. We really dig down into that in my Say It Smarter program. But so this is a question for you to actually be, okay, well, what would change if I just noted down 4 dot points and I talked very briefly to those dot points and then said, do you have any questions? What might change? You know your team. Be honest with yourself. And if there's something that comes up when you do these reflection questions, really happy for you just to reach out and say, hey, this came up. Got any ideas or suggestions about what my next step might be? Okay, so key takeaways out of today. 3 really important ones. The first one is presence. Presence, clarity, and trust. They all matter when you're wanting your team to pay attention to you, to listen to you. And they actually matter a whole lot more than authority. And by authority, what I mean is your title. You can be the CEO, but if you don't have presence, you're not providing clarity, and people don't trust you, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this recognition that you don't have to say more to be listened to, and that you're demonstrating leadership, you're demonstrating and establishing a culture where listening is great, listening is standard, listening is what's expected, if what you do is say less. So often leaders who are listened to say a whole lot less because they're listening, they're validating, they're being curious, and they're acknowledging other people. And the third key takeaway is this: calm, steady communication and leadership. It's compelling over time. Doesn't mean that you're wussing out on all the tough decisions. It doesn't mean that you can't have the hard conversations. It means that you approach them in a calm way. Okay, so thanks for today. Questions and comments on the platform that you're watching on here. #replay if you have watched a replay. That would be awesome. A reminder, I build influence and I support visibility for leaders in their organizations and in their industry. If that resonates with you, book a call. We'll have a chat about ways that we can potentially be working together. There'll be a link in the chat or underneath this for you to have a look at. Thank you. See you next week. Bye now.